Okay, I see a good number of folks in. Excuse me, a good group in. So let's get going, and we can give Lisa time to get through everything he's got. So welcome to our latest webinar, understanding the impact of legacy tool, pardon me, deprecation in IBM Planning Analytics. And today with me, I'm John Persisto. I'm the Client Success Manager here with Revelwood. I've got Lee Lazaro, who's the Director of our IBM practice and handles all of our planning analytics needs. So you can jump forward. So what are we going to do today? So we'll give you just a quick overview for those who don't know Revelwood. We'll give you a quick overview of Revelwood and who we are. And then we'll go into the legacy tool deprecation. What does that really mean? What will it change? What won't it change? We'll walk you through all those steps. And then we'll go jump into the next steps and how we'd like to be able to follow up and what you might be able to do with it later on. So really quickly about Revelwood, many of you know us. Some of you don't. We hope that you're new. We welcome you to this webinar. And we've been doing this, this says 25 years, closer to 30 years now, providing solutions to the Office of Finance. And we are, as it says here, an award-winning IBM Planning Analytics partner. We've been doing this for many years with our team. Our team are IBM Planning Analytics certified consultants, so that you'll get people working on your systems that bring both the business and the technology together. And we're very tied in with IBM in a number of the different councils and advisory boards. And this is what we do. I mentioned we provide solutions to the Office of Finance. That's all we do. That is our business. That's our niche. And that's where we bring our expertise. So with that, I am going to pass this over to Lee and let him jump in really to the meat and potatoes of this.
Great, thanks, John. Good afternoon, everyone. So let's start with the big question. Why are we having this discussion? Why are we having this session today? The reason that we're talking today is IBM has made some recent announcements that they're making changes to the overall planning analytics environment. Whether you're on the cloud or whether you're on premise, the go forward game plan is changing. If you are a cloud customer, the concept of what IBM references as the rich tier is going to be removed. It's being removed in mid-September of 2024. And by removing that, they are disabling the remote desktop, and they're going to remove, or they're going to disable, all of the legacy tools that go along with your remote desktop. If you're an on-premise user, the approach is that the version that you're using right now, most local users are using a 209 something. So it's really 2.0.9.x. The 209 version has an end of support date for next April, and the next version, the supported version, does not include the legacy tools. Okay. The pattern that we see here is the main change associated with this is the legacy tools are going to be either disabled or not supported. Okay. So what does that mean? What does that mean when we talk about legacy tools? The legacy tools are the tools that I'm going to say everybody here knows and loves over the past couple of decades. These are the tools that we see on the screen: Architect, Perspectives. Some customers are using Performance Modeler. Some customers are using Contributor. Officially, that's called the TM1 Applications Web. Okay, these are the concepts of what we call the legacy tools. And what's happening is, like we said before, we're getting rid of them. They're getting deprecated. Okay, why? The legacy interfaces, they use a set of older API calls to run their tools. Planning Analytics, however, Planning Analytics supports a brand new set of REST API calls. And these new set of calls are not able to fully interact with the older APIs. Okay? Because of these new APIs mean that the legacy tools are no longer fully compatible. Okay? And I'm purposely stressing that word fully. They are no longer fully compatible with the new Planning Analytics database. Because of this, the legacy tools are getting deprecated. Okay. So what does this mean? What does this mean for you? This means that the legacy tools are no longer supported within the new engine because they require some of the old API calls. Okay. Now, when I say the word supported, this is where we think through cloud versus on-premise. Okay. Cloud, the tool is no longer supported, it's being removed. And one of the things I like to say is the greatest thing about the cloud is you have somebody else maintaining it, managing it, and hosting it for you. The challenge with the cloud is you have somebody else maintaining and managing and supporting it for you. And as a result, in the cloud environment, the definition of deprecated means we're taking it away. On the on-premise, the definition of deprecated means it's no longer supported. Okay. Because of that, they're being replaced. And these tools are getting replaced with two new planning analytics tools. And that's what you can see over on the right side of the slide. Okay. The two new tools are called Planning Analytics Workspace, PAW, and Planning Analytics for Excel, sometimes called PAFE, sometimes called PAX. Now, I have had some customers who have said to me, I'm a little bit confused at the naming convention, partially because we're consultants, we throw acronyms into everything, but partially in terms of the overall concept of what does this mean? So the way that I like to think about this in really simplistic terms is both the tools are called PA, Planning Analytics. Okay. One of them is on the web, one of them is on Excel. Okay. W for web, PAW. Now, doesn't really mean Planning Analytics Web, it means Planning Analytics Workspace, but the easiest way to think about it is the web interface is what we call PAW. X, Excel. PAX interface is your Excel. It's as simple as just saying you used to have a web interface, you used to have an Excel interface, you still do. One of them is called PAW, one of them is called PAX. Okay. So what does that mean? It means, like we said, there's going to be a change, but there's two ways to think about the change. Okay. Not only will there be a change in what you use, you're no longer going to use architect perspectives, you're going to use PAW and PAX, but there's also going to be a change in how you use it. Okay. Now, if you're already on a full PA environment, and I know some of you are on that, then you've already deprecated perspectives internally. You're no longer using it. But if you're still on a legacy system, then the approach that you have to your interfaces will be different. In the legacy world, I called it the old world for purposes of this slide. In the legacy world, the approach that you used is if you were using web, the concept of TM1 web, if you were using web, it was fully designed to be a consumer and a consumer only. You used it for reporting, you used it for input. And then the Excel environment, what we do as perspectives, does it all. It works for reporting, it works for input, but it also works for your development. This is where you're going to create scripts and rules and dimension maintenance and cubes and things like that. And it's also your administration. Okay. In the new world, however, we flip it a full 180. In the new world, Excel is your consumer base. Excel is what you're going to use for the reporting and the input. And the web, the PAW interface, this is where you're going to say does it all. This is where you're going to use it for reporting. This is where you're going to use it for input. But the PAW interface is now where you're going to do developer and administration also. Okay. Now, it's a little bit scary to think about the change, but the good news is not everything is going to change. Okay? The legacy tools are going to go away. This is going to impact how you perform some of the tasks in your environment, but not everything is going away. Okay. What will change? I've said it almost every slide. I'm going to continue to say it. Architected perspectives are going away. Okay? The other thing that's changing, the access to the rich tier. If you're on the cloud, that concept of remote desktop is going away. Okay. But what will not change? You will still have the ability to use TM1 Web. Okay? Right now, IBM has said TM1 Web is still functional. Everything is going to be out there, whether you're cloud or on-premise. You'll still have the ability to use web as an interface. You'll still have the ability to use Excel to publish out to the web. TM1 Web is still there. Okay? What will not change is the ability to run your external programs. Okay? What will change is the ability to how. Yeah, I shouldn't say the ability. What will change is how you do that. You'll still be able to run your batch scripts. You'll still be able to run PowerShell scripts and anything else that you've created. You're still going to be able to use TI commands using execute command. Okay. And for the cloud users, you're still going to be able to access the S drive. You're still going to be able to upload scripts onto the S drive. The difference is you won't be doing it through that rich tier. You won't be doing it through that Windows interface. You'll instead do it through an FTP tool of some form. Maybe you're using FileZilla or something that your organization uses. Maybe you're going to use old batch scripting or FTP scripting. Okay, but the approach is you'll still be able to access your S drive using an FTP tool with the same ID and password that's going to be defined in your welcome kit. Okay. Now, based on these changes, the big question that's been coming back to me, most of our clients have been asking about is one tool in particular. They've been asking about perspectives. That brings us to the goal of today's presentation. Okay? The goal of today's presentation is to review what life is going to be like when architect and perspectives are not there. Okay? It doesn't matter if you're an on-premise user or a cloud user. This is your wake-up call. Okay? Perspectives and architect are going away. I'm going to pause for a moment for dramatic effect, okay? Because I do want to stress that. It's very, very important. Perspectives and architect are going away. It's going away in the short term based on these changes right here, and it is not in IBM's long-term roadmap. Okay. Now, most of us know that perspectives and architect are essentially the same tool. So for purposes of today's discussion, I'm just going to keep referring to this as perspectives. So even though I'm just going to say perspectives, the concept of perspectives and architect are what we're referencing for this. Okay. So the first thing we want to think about is, what do we do within perspectives? Well, perspectives really supports three types of tasks. It supports your admin tasks, it supports your developer tasks, and it supports your end user tasks. Okay, admin tasks. This is where you're maintaining your users, setting up your security, creating your users and your groups and pieces like that. This is where you're maintaining your database, your configuration settings, recycling it, looking at your log files, pieces like that, administering and maintaining your system. Developer, this is where you're creating. This is where you're creating all of your code, rules, TI scripts, creating cubes, pieces like that. Okay. And the third use of perspectives is for the consumer. This is where I'm pulling. I'm pulling information either in a structured format. Maybe I've got some predefined report and all I do is go into it and look at it. Or maybe I'm going to do some kind of an ad hoc analysis. I'm creating a view. I'm doing something on the fly. Okay. So breaking it up into these three categories, you can see from this slide that there's a lot of details within each area. So what I wanted to do next is I wanted to look further into each one of these. Now, let me throw out a little preface here. The goal of this presentation is it's not to go into detail about all of the intricate features of PA. There is some great stuff in planning analytics. There are great webinars, there are great blogs out there, there's great links out there that show all the intricate details and all the how-tos. Okay. In addition, Revelwood is very comfortable with this. We will absolutely be happy to talk to anybody, answer questions, go into the intricate details. Okay. The goal of today is for us to summarize how. How are we going to perform the tasks that were previously done in perspectives? Okay. So what you see on the screen is you can see that there's a list of tasks that we perform and a few simple screenshots of where we find this. Okay. So thinking about that approach, how do we do administration? The administration is going to be done in the PAW interface, and it's going to be done in two separate areas. One area is what we call the administration tile. So for those of you who have logged into PAW in the past, you know that when you first log in, there are some giant boxes, some giant squares there. Those boxes are what we call the tiles. And everybody's going to have the ability to look at reports depending on your security. You might be able to create, you might be able to model, or you might be an administrator. If you go into the administrator tile, the top right that you see on the screen is what you would see in regards to the administration area. The kinds of functionality, the kinds of capability that you're going to have in the PAW environment is databases. This is where you're going to create and manage your databases. And some of the new features that you're going to see are you're going to see the ability to do monitoring and do alerting. You can see on this image that there's a green checkbox right there where we're able to do traffic lighting, where I'm able to monitor things like disk space, things like CPU usage. The tool will allow us to set up traffic lighting. Green is good, yellow is a bit of a warning, red's an issue. I want to be able to say, if I am using XYZ percentage of my CPU, I want some kind of notification. Maybe the notification is the checkbox, maybe I send some kind of an email out. But the database section is where we're going to maintain our database. Okay. Users and groups, this is where we're going to manage our PA users. You could see on the overall summary, here's my total number of users. Let me do some kind of a breakdown based on their role and based on their licensing. This is also where I'm going to be able to offer some of the configuration, some of the setup for my users in regards to how they access PAW. Okay. Integrations, this is where we're going to be able to integrate with other IBM products. Lifecycle management. Lifecycle management is your new migration tool. This is going to give you the opportunity, and this is going to give you the ability to migrate your PAW content. When you're creating new PAW books, when you're creating new components on the web, this is going to give us the ability to migrate from dev to prod. I want to be able to create a web page. I want to be able to create something in the dev environment, and then I want to shoot it over to prod. But I don't want to have to go back and change the name of the server. Maybe I have the name of the server as XYZ test and XYZ prod as my two servers. The lifecycle management is going to give me the ability not just to migrate the tools, but to also perform some of the maintenance and some of the functionality to ensure that it's going to work after I do the migration. Excel, this is a cool new feature in PAW. This is the concept of being able to download the latest version of PAX or PAFE. Okay, you no longer have to go out to Fix Central. You no longer have to log in. You no longer have to figure out what's the latest version and do scans and searches and pieces like that. I could go into a simple tile here. I could click on it, and it's going to give me the ability to download the latest Excel. It's also going to give us the ability to load previous releases and maybe even demo some of the upcoming components of it, where all I have to do is click on the box, I grab it, and I'm able to upgrade Excel. Upgrading the Excel is a lot easier. Upgraded PAX is a lot easier than it used to be because it's simply just replacing a file. There's no longer full uninstalls and reinstalls. There's no longer full implementations that we have to do solely to upgrade Excel. It's designed to simply replace one specific file, and I can grab that file from here. Okay. Now, I had said that in the Excel side, maybe we have the ability to start thinking about some of the new pieces coming out, and that's the next tile, features and configuration. This gives you the ability to turn on some new features that are coming so you can properly test your system. Every once in a while, there's some new features or some new functionality that's pretty massive. You know, for those of you who've been using PAW for a while, you know that recently, within the past year or two, IBM did a full rebranding of the interface. They have added some new functionality, and some of these things had a big impact. This functionality allows us to preview what it's going to look like so that we have the ability to go into our development environment, see what it's going to look like, see how it impacts our system, start doing all the development so we don't have to be in a reactive mode. We could be in a proactive mode where we make changes in preparation for it, and we could do that in a development environment. So with the combination of features and configurations to turn it on, lifecycle management to migrate it, gives us the ability to plan and be prepared. Okay. And the last tile that you see there is Secure Gateway. Secure Gateway is our cloud-based ODBC. Now, one of the things to note is this is changing in the very near future meaning possibly even in the next few days, that IBM is migrating from the Secure Gateway tool into a new tool called Satellite Connector. It's still going to be the cloud-based ODBC, but this gives us the ability to create and use those ODBC connections just like we had in the previous version. Some of the functionality is in the admin tile. Some of the functionality that you're going to do is still the same approach that you used before, where I could right-click on a server name, and I can then see the aspects of the administrative function. That's what you can see on the bottom. This bottom image gives me the ability to right-click on a server name, and this is where I'm still going to be able to do some of the same functionality I had before. Save data, refresh security. I want to be able to look at some of those aspects. But it's also going to give me the ability to do some new functionality. Import. I'm going to be able to import some data, and just by drag and drop, I'm going to be able to load it into a cube. File manager. I'm going to have a replacement for the overall concept of Windows, where I'm going to look at paths and folders and subfolders and things like that. And we're going to go into file manager a little bit later. I want to show you some of that in detail. Okay, but from an administrative function, this is where you're going to use a combination of both the admin tile and the modeling workbench in the web environment to translate into what you used to do in Excel. Next role, developers. This is where we're doing our creating. The concept of development has a new term in it called modeler. And as part of that modeler, there is a aspect in there called a modeling workbench. Modeling workbench is where you're going to do all of your development components. Rules. There's a new rule editor. So based on this new rule editor, you could see that in the right side, the top image, that's the rule editor. You're going to see that there are a lot of aspects coming into that. Looks a little bit more like a legitimate editor. Color coding, line numbers, aspects like that. You can also see that it's got things built into it, such as those the triangles. You can see in line 1, line 6, you've got triangles. This gives us the ability to do grouping. We call them regions. Okay. Based on that approach, it's a lot easier to use, a lot nicer looking. Similar concept for Turbo Integrator. The bottom image is a concept of the Turbo Integrator. So based on that, we've got a brand new editor with similar concepts. couple of the new things that are built into it are a debugger. So instead of having to write code with ASCII outputs and trying to figure out what your variables are and pieces like that, there's a built-in debugger. There's also logic built into the system so that if you look at line 10, you could see line 10 is the beginning of an if statement. Line 15 is the end of it. Automatically grouping a region that came into play. And there's buttons on there that are going to give us the opportunity to automate that. I had a piece of code that I just read just recently. I had a piece of code that I was looking at from a developer who simply just had everything left justified. And it was, I think it was 480, and I'm just round up to 500 lines of code. I was able to click on a single button, and this approach with the new Turbo Integrator component allowed all of the indenting to happen with a single click. All of my ifs, all of my nested ifs, all of my while loops, all of the components where I want to create some kind of an easy to read indenting happened with a single click. Okay. How? As you can see, both the rule editor and the TI editor have some icons in there. So if you look at that icons right under the word save on the rules, right above where it says Open Debugger on the TI script, there's a whole series of icons. I just told you about one of them. One of my other favorite ones is in the center on each of those. You can see that there's an icon that looks like a number sign or a pound sign. This gives us the ability to batch a comment. So in the past, if I wanted to comment out an entire section of code, maybe I had some kind of a subroutine in a TI script that was 10 lines long. I would go to line 1, I would press the pound sign. I'd go to line 2, press the pound, 3, 4. I would do it one at a time. This approach with the batch commenting allows me to highlight all 10 lines, and with a single click, I can either comment or uncomment. Allows me to quickly turn things on and off. Okay? And one other really cool thing that happens with this editor is you don't have to worry about accidentally deleting highlighted code when you jump around from screen to screen. When you're in Turbo Integrator, one of the challenges that I've had and that you might have had is if you are in a TI script, you have a line highlighted and then you flip windows. Maybe you press Alt Tab, maybe you click on another window. You come back and you see that code replaced with a whole bunch of tabs. Okay? If you're anything like I am, it drives you nuts. Okay, my kids have probably learned some new words they shouldn't have learned when I was coding TI. That approach, gone. That approach is not an issue in the new script editor. One of the things that it was purposely created for is to give you the ability to flip back and forth, whether I'm going from script to script or script to rules or script to my view. When I come back to my script, I'm not going to lose everything with those tabs. Okay. Create your rules, create your TI. Also, as a developer, you're going to use the modeling workbench for building dimensions and cubes, specifically with your dimension maintenance. Okay. In the legacy world, if I want to maintain a dimension, there's a lot of definitions of what that means. Maybe I want to manipulate the elements itself. Maybe I want to manipulate the attributes. Maybe I want to manipulate the security. In the old world, in the legacy world, those are 3 different areas. In the new world, there's a single interface that does it all. It gives us the ability to do everything without having to flip your screens back and forth. And it also gives us the ability to easily create. If I wanted to create a new dimension and I had some kind of a text file, maybe I have parent-child, or maybe I have parent-child in a few levels, and maybe my text file also has names and pieces like that, there's a built-in wizard. And this wizard allows me to just drag a file and then define my columns. Column 1 is parent, column 2 is child, column 3 is a description, column 4 is an alias. Hey, let me just go. It'll write the TI for us, it'll load the data, it'll build the dimension. Okay? No more needing to have to go into code, write custom code to do all of that. Developers will be able to do all of this inside what they call the modeling workbench. Third group of users, end users. Okay, end users are what we now call consumers. Okay? And to me, there are 2 iterations of end users, like we said before. There are the users who are going to use structured reports. There's the users who are going to do ad hoc analysis. Okay? I'm going to focus this slide on that second one, the ad hoc analysis. Where are you going to do that? You have the flexibility now. Like we saw on the slide a few slides back, the concept of Excel is now designed to pull information. This gives you the flexibility. Admin, done on the web. Developer, done on the web. End user, you have the choice. Parfait, PAW, or both. Okay? Ad hoc analysis. This is where you're now going to do this through a few different approaches. Okay, one of them is called an exploration. They've changed the name from an exploration. Okay, so back in the legacy world, if I want to do some kind of an ad hoc analysis, what I do is I create a view. inside Server Explorer. And then I do everything in a completely separate interface. Drag and drop my dimensions, pick my elements, set my titles, all those pieces. And then when I'm done, then I click a button and shoot it out to Excel. In the new world, I could do it directly in Excel. I could do it from the paw interface and send it out to Excel, or I could use the Parfait interface to do it directly in Excel. And it comes with some new features into it, which is kind of cool. One of the new features that I've shown on the screen is what we call asymmetrical stacking. The approach to asymmetrical stacking is symmetry. I want everything constant. Okay. Asymmetrical, don't need it. If I'm in perspectives and I want to look at something similar to what we have on the screen, you could see right here that our top row, our Excel line 13, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different companies. On the bottom row, we are looking at 2 different scenarios. Well, in perspectives, if I want to look at 7 different companies, 2 different scenarios, 7 times 2, 14, I'm going to see 14 columns. In the new world, we have the ability to say, I don't need that symmetry. I could take one or both of the pieces and pick and choose the columns that I want. And you can see on the screen that when I'm looking at the total companies, I'm looking at actuals. And it's the only thing I want to see in actuals. But when I go into plan, now I want to see all the details. Okay? That's what we call asymmetrical stacking, which is designed to work in both Parfait and PAW. And there's also some new features that the ability to easily insert calculations. When I'm in the interface, again, Excel or web, I can highlight 2 columns, I can right click and I could say build. I want to build some kind of calculation. Maybe I want to put variance dollars. Maybe I want to put variance percentages. Yeah, I could do everything in Excel and I could write all the formulas and make it work, but there's a wizard in there that will allow us to look at those pieces and do a series of formulas with almost no thinking and almost no development. Okay. We also have the ability on the website to convert these data sets into visualizations. I could easily create some kind of an exploration and then just change the visualization into a bar chart or a line chart. Gives me the ability to not have to create brand new graphs and not have to think through all the concepts and the approaches to it. I could simply create a data grid, say change the look and feel. Okay. Subsets. We also have the ability to use the new subset editor. There's a new approach, and IBM has actually trimmed down the name of it. Instead of calling it subset, we're now actually calling it set. The new set editor allows us to quickly do some of the things that we struggled with in the old world. Okay, lists. There's a series of pre-built lists that'll be built in. All leaf level elements, all of our members, all of our roots. Instead of having to click on the all button and filter down to level 0 and sort alphabetically, or instead of creating some kind of a subset and wondering, oh my gosh, did I create this as a dynamic subset or a static subset? Is everything up to date? Instead of having to think about aspects like that, they're all built into the tool. And the ability to create the list is also a lot faster. I could create a list, and then I could take that list and add something to it easily. If I knew that I wanted January, March, and June, I don't have to create a list, click on January, say copy it, and then I go through my list again and figure out March, and then I single click and keep March, and then I paste January above it, and I go one at a time. I know it's a bit of a challenging example with time because that's not really applicable, but I know that's realistic when you're thinking of accounts, companies, departments, etc. Well, in the legacy world, it was a really, really mundane process for us to have to go through, go one piece at a time. In the new subset editor, it gives me the ability to quickly say, I've got a list, just add one more piece to it. Also gives me the ability to quickly create a piece. Maybe I want to look at a year and I want to look at all the months. Well, I could simply say, pick the year and show me all the somethings below it. Show me all the descendants, show me all the leaf only, show me all of the components of it. And it gives me the ability to do all that with a single click. And as I'm searching, there's a new search parameter where I don't have to use wildcard characters. Just a few hours ago, I was working with somebody and we had to look for an element. So we said, make sure you put the asterisk at the beginning. Make sure you put the asterisk at the end. Don't have to do that anymore. Not only do we have the ability to simply type the letter and search for it, but we have the ability to create multiple parameters off of a wizard. I want to find all elements that start with the letter J, and then within that, I want to be able to look at everything that has some other kind of criteria, maybe ends with the letter K, something like that. Gives us the ability to quickly manipulate sets and a lot easier without having to do redundancy. And the biggest piece that comes into play in the new environment is your report types. When we were looking at things through review, we had the ability to navigate that view, and then I can send it out in a series of different ways. Maybe it was a slice, maybe it was a snapshot, maybe it was a dynamic set. PAFE still gives us the ability to look at a series of report types, and each report has a purpose. Exploration, similar to a view that we used to work with. Quick report, a new approach that gives us the ability to eliminate DBRW formulas, eliminate all of our equal DBs, equal subnims, etc., and create reports that non-connected users can reference and then come back into planning analytics and utilize. Dynamic reports, custom reports, these are the concepts of our dynamic approach and our slices. Universal report, a new report that's coming into play, which is fully MDX based and gives us the ability to have dynamic rows, dynamic columns, a series of aspects. Okay? A lot of cool stuff in regards to the approach with these. Okay? But one of the things that we want to think about, though, is brings us to the details of how do we ensure that our existing perspectives reports are properly going to work in PAFE. So I had said at the beginning of the presentation that one of the main reasons for this change is due to the new API calls. Well, these API calls impact the way we use Visual Basic within our Excel files. So we need to ensure that the code is going to work in the new environment. Okay. If you were using a wizard-based approach, if you were using action buttons, well, behind the scenes, there's some Visual Basic. So if we were using action buttons, we need to convert them from perspectives to PAFE. The great thing about it, though, is we built the button with a wizard. We're going to convert it with a wizard. So PAFE gives us an approach where I could simply open up a report. I can follow a button that says convert this, and you're converted. If you manually create it, if you're using VB, then what we need to do is we need to think about what's our VB approach going forward. If we're going from perspectives to PAFE, we want to look into the VB functionality and the VB commands that we're using. All Excel VB functionality is still going to be functional. The TM1/PA commands that we had used in the past are the ones that we want to reassess. And there's two ways to reassess it. I want to take my Excel reports and I want to keep them in Excel. We want to change the VB behind it. Maybe you want to take your Excel reports and create them on the web. Well, the web doesn't have VB concept behind it. So that's something where we might want to remove it and redesign. So we want to think that one through. You also want to think about your MDX. Majority of the MDX that you've written in perspectives is going to be functional in PAFE. But some MDX functions, example, TM1 subset basis, some MDX functions are not compatible with the new version. So anything that you've created as a dynamic subset, anything that you've created as part of an active form report, anything that you've created that you reference, you want to run some tests, you want to make sure that those are going to convert over. And the final thing you want to think about on the changing from perspectives to PAFE is you want to think about the calculation method. In the past, most of the customers that we work with, they would set their Excel to be manual calculation. Why? Perspectives is what we call a pretty chatty client. A lot of interaction going back and forth. We don't want to waste the processing for us to have to constantly recalculate. PAFE is much faster. Okay? And because of that, one of the benefits of PAFE is because it's so faster, don't force the users to have to click on a button to recalculate, and PAFE recommends using automatic calculation. This is something you want to take into consideration. Maybe there are situations where you want the automatic calculation. I have a single selector on the top. I change my value. Hey, my report below changed automatically. Maybe you don't want it turned on. Maybe I have 2 selectors up on the top or 10 selectors up on the top. Well, if I'm changing 10 selectors, I don't want to change the first selector and have the report refresh because I have to wait a few seconds. And then I do the second one and wait, and the third one. Something like that could take 30 to 60 seconds just for us to pick what data do we want to see. This is where we want to think through how do we want our calculation set up. Okay. And one other change for the cloud users. I had mentioned before that the access to the S drive on the cloud is no longer done via Windows Explorer. Okay. Why? There's no rich tier. There's no RDP. There's no Windows. There's no Windows Explorer. So there's 2 different ways that we can access what we know as the S drive. Approach number 1, a new tool called File Manager. This is the one that we saw over on the admin screen when I right-clicked on the server name. And what File Manager is designed to do, it's designed to simulate the concept of what we had for our Windows environment. And you can see those 2 images over on the right. The top image is just looking at File Manager. The bottom image is if I click the specific element. When I'm looking at File Manager, you could see that there's information here. There's the concept of files and folders. If it's a file, it's going to give us information about the size, and both of those, it's going to give us the dates, just like we saw in Windows. There's some icons on there where I could do search and refresh and download and create a new folder. And when I'm looking at a file, you could see that I can manipulate that file. I can download it to bring it to my machine. I can cut and paste it to move it. I can zip and unzip it. I can completely delete it. Okay? We have the opportunity to do that inside your environment, or you also have the ability to do FTP components. So for those customers who were taking aspects and pushing out to the to the S drive, we have one customer who every night they grab a series of data files in CSV format, they group them all together, they push them out to the cloud. You're still going to be able to do that because there's still the ability to have that S drive. But if you want to access it, we either use the new file manager or we use some kind of a third-party tool. Okay? Revelwood typically uses FileZilla, and that's what we recommend. Okay. So what have I shown you? I've shown you very quickly a whole bunch of new stuff. And this is where, when you put it all together, probably the most important aspect of this migration is training. Okay? The way I like to think about training is I like to think about the role base, what we talked about before, we saw in that first slide. Admin users, developer users, and some kind of consumer, whether they're end user or power user. Admin users, we want to be able to make sure that you understand, how do I access it, PAW? How do I use it? We looked at a whole bunch of tiles today, but we didn't go into the intricate details. We want to make sure that you have that opportunity. Developer, we know that if you're a developer right now, you already know how to write code. This gives you the opportunity to say, I want to write while loops and if statements and pieces like that, but we want to show you some of the new features and the interfaces. We want to make sure that you understand how to use it. End users and power users, this is probably your most important. As an administrator, you're comfortable with things changing constantly. It's what we do. As a developer, you're probably comfortable with it. As an end user, I want to be able to go and do my stuff and get out. And this gives us the opportunity to make sure that your users know how to go in. Where am I going? Am I going to a new Excel interface? Am I going to a web interface? Am I going to both? Okay. And this also leads to new opportunities because regularly I had just said you're already doing, but in addition to showing your existing team how to use these new interfaces, this is a great opportunity to introduce new personnel into the mix. Maybe you want to take over more development tasks. Maybe you want to create some new developers in the organization. Maybe you want to train a backup admin. Okay? This is also an opportunity to refresh yourself on the best practices for your environment. Okay? So when I look at this, when you're thinking about how to build and maintain your environment, you don't want to just do it. You want to make sure that you're doing it the right way. This is where you have the opportunity to start introducing best practices. This is where you have the opportunity to go back and reassess what had I been doing and what do I want to do going forward. But I also like to look at this as this entire transition opens up other opportunities within your environment. Okay? One of the things that you can do, and I recommend this strongly, almost every customer who knows me knows that I talk about periodically taking a look at your report cleanup. Okay, this is something that's really, really important where you want to review your existing reports and figure out what do you really need. You know, organize your reports, must have. These are the things that you have to convert. Okay, this is going to be required to be available as soon as you're migrated into the new system. Okay, nice to have. These are the ones that can be recreated over time, but they're not necessarily required right away. Okay, and your biggest piece, reports that can be eliminated. These are the kinds of pieces that people aren't using. Maybe it's redundant to another report. Maybe there's no significant reporting value. You know, we once had a client who we did a migration with them, and they told us that they needed over 1,000 reports to be recreated. We spent a little bit of time, we reviewed it with them, we optimized it, we talked to some people, and we ended up bringing that 1,000 reports down to 98. Okay? We found that there were a whole bunch of reports that were being produced. They had no business benefit. We found that there were a whole series of reports that were being produced. Nobody even looked at it. This is a great opportunity for you to think through what reports do I want to convert and maybe even stop using. Okay. It's also an opportunity to clean up your system. We have written some great blogs about this on our website. One of the very first blogs I ever wrote was all about cleaning your system, referencing your attic, all the junk in your attic. This is a great opportunity for you to think through what can I get rid of that we're no longer using. We just talked about reports. Maybe there's some old scripts out there. Maybe there's old subsets. This is also an opportunity to think about some of the naming conventions. Maybe you had something that made sense years ago, but now you want to start grouping things together. And most people think about this only for cubes, but this is also helpful for dimensions, maybe your report names, maybe the way that you're grouping pieces together. Okay? This is your opportunity to not just migrate up to a new version, but also clean up what you had. Okay? And when you think about the cleanup, don't just think about it on the technical side. This also gives you the ability to start thinking on the business side. Okay? New functionality. Maybe there's some new modules you wanted. Maybe the business process changed. Maybe when you first created it, you just had a giant list of accounts and all I was doing is populating expenses. But maybe now you have you start realizing, well, I want to plan staff by person. Maybe I want to plan revenue by client. Maybe I want to put in a little bit more granular line item detail. This is your opportunity to create some of that new functionality. And this is also the great opportunity to think about how. How do I do my planning process? What are my requirements? Maybe the approach that I have is too simplistic. Maybe it's too complex. We had one client who originally wanted to do their planning by each individual contract. Every contract had an input template. Every contract had some data that they were putting in. And after their first year of doing it, they decided way too granular. It was too hard for our users. It was really, really time consuming. So let's create something that's a little bit better. What they did is they were able to say, instead of planning by each individual contract, they were able to merge concepts together. Faster business process, faster system, happier customers, gave them the opportunity to change their process. And this is also the ability for you to start thinking about decentralizing. I regularly talk to customers who say, oh, it all falls on me. I do everything. I get on the phone, I talk to people, and they tell me what to put in, and I will have one hand on the phone and my other hand on the keyboard, and I'm going to load everything in, and then I have to get my regular job started. This is a great opportunity for you to decentralize. Your opportunity to have your end users do more data entry. And it gives you the ability to eliminate some of the redundancy. It gives you the ability for your finance team to do more analysis and less data entry. So there's a lot of opportunities to think about that are outside of the technical itself. Okay? And this brings us back to the purpose of today's session. Okay? The cloud and the local on-premise. Both of these approaches are deprecating the legacy tools. They're deprecating what you know as perspectives, and this is where we want to start planning. So the things that you want to think about when you're planning, think about the fact that there's going to be a software upgrade. If you're in the cloud environment, they're going to upgrade the cloud. They're going to upgrade the software for you. But if you're local, start planning. Figure out what you're going to need on the IT side. Make sure that you have the appropriate machines. We've worked with a couple of customers who said this is the opportunity for us to change our machine, whether it's physical or virtual. We've worked with customers who say, hey, I need IT approval for this, and it's going to take a little while. Start planning for it. The number of reports, think through how many reports do we want to convert and what kinds of things do we want to do? I had my example before of 1,000 going down to 98, but realistically, there's at least a half a dozen to a dozen reports that you're going to need. Start thinking about that. Start thinking about how are you going to do it? Who's going to do it? When do we have to have them by? I had my exclamation point before on training. Still believe it's the most important thing. We want to make sure that we're training your users. You want to train all three groups of users, and you want to make sure that you start thinking about how do I get them all together? Whether they're physically in the same room or whether they're on some kind of a Zoom session, this is a finance team. There's always bad times in the month. There's always good times in the month. Start thinking through in advance when you want to do some of that training. And it's your opportunity to think about your business functions. Okay, make sure that when you're planning this, you have to plan around it. We know that for many of our calendar customers, you guys are getting ready. It's only June, the summer just started, but you're getting ready for your budget. We know that in September, your budget's going to be cranking away. In October, November, you might be really busy. We know that in January, you're doing year-end close. A lot of aspects that come into play so that when you're planning those first three lines under plan accordingly, you want to think through the timing of the fourth one. Okay. And with that, thank you very much for listening. I'm going to turn things back over to John.
Thanks, Lee. Appreciate that. So as you can all see, there have been a lot of changes associated with the deprecation of perspectives. Some of these changes are real technical in nature. Some of them are more process oriented, and this is where we really can help you. And our combination of software knowledge and planning expertise can help. Let us, as we like to say, let us guide you through the forest. Jump to the next lead. So how do we do that? What does the process look like? We've got a 3-step migration program, which we'll be happy to go into more depth with you about. But really, the first step is looking at taking a one-to-one call with us. So we can walk through what you have, what it looks like, what it might be, put together a roadmap over the course of a couple of days, and then really work with you side by side to implement the project and the changes, and make sure you've got everything that you need. All right, and just remember, we are here to help. We did a deep dive into some pretty technical details today. We can know this can get confusing really quickly. That's also another area that we can help with. Whether you're looking just to train your team on how to use the tool and the features, or whether you're really looking for someone to partner with to review the whole existing model, we can help you. We've got over 25 years, like I said earlier, closer to 30 years experience implementing those solutions to help you define, plan, and prep for whatever you need. All right, I wanted to throw one new solution that we've developed your way to make your planning analytics life easier. Data Maestro, some of you may have heard of it. It's a brand new tool that we've developed to execute the movement of data within and across queues faster and easier. Say you want to copy a scenario to a quarter or a year. Maybe you want to increase the numbers 10%. Perhaps you've got multiple processes you run and would like to schedule them and also be notified that they ran successfully and record the results. You know, how you do that today, probably using complex TI processes, if you do it at all. With Data Maestro, you get all of that and more. All the things you need to do: snapshotting, copying data, manipulating easily and quickly, and generally managing the movement of data across your whole PA environment without complex turbo integrator scripting. All right, Lee, and thanks very much, folks, for attending today's call. I hope this presentation gave you some valuable information. We would appreciate you taking just a quick, maybe a 15-minute call over the next week or so to chat. In the next day or so, myself, one of my colleagues will be reaching out to get your feedback and just have a brief conversation. But in the meantime, if you've got any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. Questions about Revelwood, about today's topic, or anything else related to your planning analytics environment. Thanks again for attending, and have a great rest of your day.